Hello and welcome back to the Teachers Teaching Teachers podcast. We've got a guest today, so go grab your cup of tea, get ready for your walk or drive, and let's get into it. Okay, so we are here with one of my favorite people that I've had the privilege of knowing for the last couple of years. His name is Christopher Harris. So, Chris, maybe just a quick hello and I guess introduce yourself. How are you?
Yeah, so good day. Yep. So my name's Chris Harris, and that's my housemate coming home. So I teach in the Golden Valley region. I'm a science teacher. Came through the Teach for Australia program. Generally speaking, it's the end of the year where we're kind of pushing through the last bits of all the leftover bureaucracy. So feeling good overall. Looking forward to next year. Very very positive about the things to come.
And that's awesome. Yeah, beautiful. Super excited to have you on. So what we're going to do at the start, before we, delve into, I guess, like Chris Harry, your journey and how you got into teaching and these kind of things, what I'm doing at the start of every podcast is I'm doing this thing where I will give my guest 5 random things around teaching. And basically, I want you to then give me an up or a down or a yes or a no, and as to why you feel that way. Okay?
Right, as in like positive or negative.
Essentially, like, do you like them or do you not? Are you with them? Do you agree with them? Do you not? That kind of thing, right? And they'll just be random statements, very random statements.
Yeah, cool.
You'll see as I go through them.
Yeah, we'll get the vibe.
So the first one that I'm going to throw your way are smart whiteboards.
Ooh, yeah, one of these.
Fair enough. Yeah, have you ever used one? Because I actually never have used one yet.
Yeah. So I had a couple. I was lucky enough to work with a couple last year, and when you get them working well, and when you've got the proper software for it, they are schmicko. But the thing is, a lot of the time you don't have, I suppose, a frequent enough experience with them to gain, the sort of understanding of how to use them properly. So if you don't know how to use them properly and you don't put in that time and effort, it really becomes like an awkward sort of, will they, won't they, in terms of whether or not it's effective.
Yeah, I feel like that's where I'll kind of get caught in my first attempt, because I'd have no idea what's going on. But it's good to know.
Definitely speak to your IT crew, I reckon. They are some of our best friends at our high schools. So if you can get on them, they'll hook you up with the right stuff, or they'll tell you that the smartboard's not working before you try something. So
True. And extremely important before you walk into that room.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Second one, and I didn't actually know when I wrote this one that you were in the midst of it all, but report writing.
Yeah.
That's enough?
Yeah, absolutely. That's enough. Yeah.
Why is that enough?
Report writing is hard yakka, especially depending on where you are, because different schools can do it differently and different states do it differently.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the few times we really get to connect with the student and the parent at the same time. So you've got things like parent-teacher interviews, for example, but then not every parent, has to go to that. That's and I think it's positive that way, because if they were forced, I think it would be a much less pleasant environment to be in. But the reports are a really nice way to just say, here's roughly, where your child is, and to the student, here's roughly where you are. Here are some ways we could grow from there. You don't have to do any of the legwork for that. We're giving this to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's really positive for a lot of families that wouldn't otherwise potentially engage. But also, there tends to be a little bit more in terms of the specifics of what the students need to do, as opposed to the intuitive stuff that's covered in the parent-teacher interview.
Well, which leads me very nicely to my third one, which was parent-teacher interview. So what are your thoughts around them?
Yeah, I'm fairly positive tonight. I'm feeling good.
Fantastic. I'm loving it. And I guess you touched on that a little bit as well. Yeah.
It's just that positive sort of intuitive touch in. It is nice to meet the parents, I find, because I think, dealing with, children and adolescents, it is such an emotional position. There's a lot of emotional energy involved in that. I think one thing that it's sometimes easy to lose sight of is the fact that there are parents out there that are trusting us with their children, So being able to sit down with these parents and, you know, give them our time and let them know that we appreciate their trust just as they appreciate our effort, I think is a really nice way of kind of solidifying that relationship.
Yeah. And I have many of the same views as you there. I really think parent-teacher interviews are underrated. I think you know, the way that we speak about them also, like with parents, is it's a great opportunity to like be a team, you know, like we're both of us in a home environment and the school environment are both thinking around the best for that child, you know. And I think
absolutely,
you know, if you can combine the two together, then you've got some good things happening there. Okay, school camps or excursions?
Oh yes.
Have you been on any in the last couple of years? I have.
Oh yeah. No, actually, I went on one at the start of this year. It was at Barwon Heads for biology, as a absolutely schmicko camp. And it's a great way to get to know your students, and also for your student cohort to get to know each other. Really good way also, and I think this is underappreciated, to get to know your colleagues. You know, because when you're out in Whoop Whoop, you got each other. And if there happens to be a staff member, you know, of the place that you're visiting, great, they'll have you around. But in terms of taking care of the kids, most of the time you're kind of like leaning on each other as much as possible. Plus, I think that there are those times when you're in a lesson where you're just so focused on curriculum, where when you're on camp, you can, you know, really fill in a couple of those sort of more general holistic gaps. For example, you know, I'm a biology teacher. I was on a biology camp, but I had a long and really thorough discussion about the story of Gilgamesh with a young man. Fantastic story, great bit of mythology there. Highly recommend it. But it meant that, you know, I really got to see myself in that role of, being able to provide something a little bit more broad than just simply the curriculum.
Yeah. And I'll touch on this in a second, but just so like as later on, because it's something that I've really wanted to speak to you about is, you know, the way that you go about building these relationships with students, you know, at school, and like how that looks. So we'll touch on that in a second, a bit after this. But for the final one, another banger in my opinion, but I've got the school canteen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you use it much?
Now, here's the thing. Almost. You see, and the reason I say almost is because I've almost had to use it 3 times. I've used it once, and the other 2 times I've had a staff member come in, going for like a cheeky shops run. But yeah, I would say in terms of us being a staff member, super handy. Also, like the canteen people are super lovely. But also, I think for students who come from backgrounds where their parents may not have a lot of time in the morning to fix up, you know, their lunches and do that sort of classic 1950s Brady Bunch business, you know, not to trivialize it, of course, but to say, you know, like it's the classic sort of nuclear family expectation. For families that don't have that, I think the school canteen is a really good resource. You know, I mean, you know, there's a lot of debates with regard to whether a given school's menu could be healthier and so on and so forth. But I think it's at the very least, you know, really good in that sense.
It's interesting at our school. The way it works is like if a staff member goes, it'll be kind of, if you want it, it'll be put on like a little tab that you've created, which can become very dangerous. So in my experience, unfortunately, recently, I have just paid off a hefty little tab at the school canteen. But I'm not mad about it because at the same time, I'm supporting the couple that are running the canteen at our school. So I'm more than happy to do it. But it's just something very easily to forget, where every day I might go and get a yogurt, or I might go and get an ice cream or a drink. And it's just adding up. And then one day I'm like, what's my tab at again? And a number comes up that sometimes you don't want to hear.
Oh my goodness.
But no, I definitely think exactly like the thing you said about like the students, though, definitely.
Sure. But I can totally understand, you know, I mean, are you more of a strawberry or vanilla man when it comes to a canteen ice cream?
Probably a vanilla man. Look, to be honest, I'm not a strawberry fan in many
Oh.
desserts. Yeah.
Oh, that surprises me. You just
Yeah.
seem like the kind, strawberry is just a very cut against the grain kind of flavour. It's not as mainstream as chocolate, but it's
True.
it's not quite as, expected as vanilla. It
As
just,
vanilla.
straddles that little line there.
Yeah,
But,
I've just never, I've never been able to connect with it. I don't know what it is. I think it's like even the milkshakes. Like I'll have it and
yeah,
I'll enjoy it, but I won't be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, that was a quality milkshake. I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
I get you.
maybe it'll
The
rub off.
phenomenology of strawberry, I understand, I can.
Well,
Oh,
coming on to
goodness.
strawberry is fantastic. I love that. But yeah, okay, awesome. So you had a +5 there, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do, so I guess just as a little break the ice kind of thing at the start there. But now, Chris, like, because obviously we've got you on, I really want to get into the crux of how you actually entered teaching. What were you
Yeah,
doing
sure.
before it? What were the thoughts? Did you always want to be a teacher? These are some of the questions that I think, obviously, the audience and myself as well would really love to know. Like, obviously, I've spent obviously some times with you in the last couple of years, but I think the opportunity to really go into depth and see how this journey, took shape for you, it would be
Mm.
really interesting to hear, and for other people that are thinking potentially of similar things as well. So, yeah, maybe just start with what were you doing before? How did teaching become like a potential option? Like, where were you at? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I I suppose in terms of getting into teaching, I always wanted to lecture. So when I got to uni, I was really passionate about botany and zoology, loved the stuff.
Yeah.
And so I figured, I saw the lecturers there and it's like, oh, beautiful. There is a job where you can just research and talk about this stuff. And that's what you do.
Yeah.
And that just seemed real schmick. And on top of that, I kind of, when I investigated, one thing that really stuck out to me was the potential, or I should say, the opportunity to inspire, young professionals
Yeah.
In the field of science. Really get them into the nitty gritty of what they, should they get into research,
Yeah.
what they may want to specialize in for years to come. Because I think it would be safe to say that in terms of the importance that I put on science and the philosophy that surrounds it. It's pretty safe to say that I'm a smidgen pretentious at best. I absolutely, adore
You do, yeah.
when, someone finds something out about, their facticity, the unshakable things about their existence.
Yeah.
And then they realize that their own understanding is something that is movable. Like that for me is just this beautiful little apple that everyone has access to, but not everyone gets to take a bite of,
Yeah.
So I went through uni and I figured, I kind of developed my own sort of niche and I got into fungi. I think fungi, some people call it, and it's not important. Latin is a dead language for a reason. The main thing is I went from bachelor's at La Trobe to an honours at Melbourne Uni where I studied fungal genetics for a year. The experiment itself didn't work out, but it was a really good sort of eye-opener in terms of research and academia and where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, a couple of times, both through my bachelor's and my honours, in various conversations about wanting to be a lecturer, because I'm a relatively enthusiastic individual when it comes to this stuff. So people just knew about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. I mean,
that's kind of
if you're engaged in a conversation with Chris about something that he's extremely passionate about, you automatically I become passionate about it too. I kid you not. Every experience that I've had.
So yeah, anyway, we've gone through our research project at this point, and after a lot of conversations, I've realized, well, academia may not be what I'm looking for. The job stability is not there, and I was with my long-term partner at the time. And so for me, having a stable, reliable job was really important.
Yeah.
But I still loved the idea of making people passionate about science. So a couple of ideas that were floated by different people were, teaching or at the very least working in high school. So I've got some friends that did their bachelor's in biological sciences and either did a double degree or a master's in education.
Yeah.
So they kind of directed me towards Teach for Australia. So I figured, Teach for Australia, teach for 2 years while learning how to teach, it'd be a really good opportunity, sort of boost my career, but also my financial situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you go from working at Lowe's to working at a school. There's a little bit of a difference in
A
terms
little
of
bit. Just slight.
the luxuries one can afford. Um, But on top of that, I figured, well, after 2 years, my honours will still be in good nick, because
Yeah.
it's usually a 3-year thing if you want to make a decision to go into a PhD.
Yes. Yes.
So I figured I come out of this this TFA degree, I decide whether or not I want to continue teaching, or I've got to pull my socks up and go into academia, because those are
Yeah.
my two little roads I kind of sorted out for myself. And that's kind of what got me into teaching. A mixture of passion for the subject that I teach,
Yeah.
and desire for, I guess a reliable financial situation, something that I never had in the past.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's fast forward then 2 years through the TFA program. Obviously, we can probably have a completely different podcast focusing in on the TFA.
Yeah, that's its own.
But yeah, maybe we can kind of keep that later. But let's say, so you've had 2 years now where you've kind of been learning on the job, getting used to it, but you've definitely been a fully functioning teacher. Essentially, you're doing all of the work that a teacher would do. So now, after that 2 years, obviously you've decided to continue with teaching.
Absolutely.
What were 1 or 2 things that really cemented for you the fact that this is where I want to continue, at least for the moment in my career?
1 or 2 things that really cemented my willingness to continue in teaching.
There's probably more.
There definitely is more. But I would say if I was to boil it down to a nice stock, or whatever the nice culinary term is, I can't get it at the moment, but it'll come to me. If I was to really get it to its essence, I would probably say the people.
Yeah.
I really thrive on being with people. I absolutely love it. Like, you look at them and you see the universe in their eyes. Everyone's just this beautiful bundle of, complexity and simplicity all at the same time. And you get to have such beautiful interactions with these people, not just students, but also staff. When I came into, my school, I really noticed pretty much straight away, the types of impact I could have. But it's only at the end of last year and the end of this year again where I really realized, that impact in the form of, kids coming in and just taking a moment to, thank you. And, you see certain kids who, these are the ones that don't necessarily need to thank you, but the kids who make better decisions as they go along in your classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also as I've gone through at the end of my 2 years, I've also become quite heavily invested in staff wellbeing as well as student wellbeing. So, going between staff members and just checking in, and firstly making sure, because nobody's perfect, just making sure that, I'm doing my work properly by them, and I'm helping grease the wheels as much as I can in terms of keeping that scholastic machinery functioning. But also checking in terms of, how are they going? What are the things that are hard for not only our teaching staff, but our leadership, our ES staff, our well-being, so on and so forth. Everyone who interacts with the school, I think, we as teachers don't necessarily have the duty, but the opportunity to check in with and really deepen those relationships. People and relationships, I would say, are kind of the crux.
Well, it's phenomenal that it's already going this way, because previously, obviously earlier in the day, I kind of wanted to form a kind of a structure, a gendery kind of thing where we'll explore a couple of things. And, one of my options was literally talking about you building relationships with students and staff, which you've already kind of led into, starting to talk about. But maybe then, for the people listening and also for myself, like you mentioned, obviously there are some of these experiences where students might come and thank you, or you might see students personally as well. I've experienced this, students that I don't necessarily feel are enjoying themselves in the class will come to you later and be like, this class really helped me in this way. And it's almost like hang on, what? It did? Because it didn't look like it was. And it's almost like, I think as teachers, a lot of the time we can always doubt what we're doing if a student is, physically seen as not enjoying themselves or being happy. But it's really difficult then to actually be able to understand what's going on in their mind, in their heart, all of these different aspects as well of their life. So maybe just, a couple of examples of how or what your strengths are in this idea of building relationships. Because personally, I think you're a very, very easy to kind of connect with kind of person, just in the way that your sincerity and genuinity comes out when you're speaking to someone. So I want to see kind of like how that, comes out in the classroom or in the staff room, or, these kind of things. Are there like specific examples and things that you find, you can do well in those situations that also might be helpful for new teachers going in,
God, there's a lot there, but I'll try and focus it in.
Yeah.
I would say, in terms of students, the way that I build relationships is I try to be as receptive and responsive as possible. I don't always get it right, but I think just in making an effort to include kids and have a bit of a laugh with them and do my best to show them that I want to be nice to them and I want to welcome them into, the culture of my classroom. I think in providing that effort, students see that you're there for them.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of students, that's the best thing. If you do actively put in the effort in front of them, they will see that and they will appreciate that so much more because, we're only human. I think a lot of what we feel comes from what we see and what we experience in our environment. So if we can make our students' environment feel like there are people there that care about them and want the best for them, and we can make that an actively visible thing, I think that goes a long way, or at least it has in my experience, in terms of developing those relationships. Not always, there are kids that will walk over that.
Yes.
But
yes.
But I think for the kids that need it, really helps them out.
Is there like specific strategies or moments that you can then recall where you've been able to create this culture or environment in the classroom that is, as inclusive as you can make it be or safe as you can make it be? Like, are there things that you've now over the 2 years you realize this is something that needs to be in all of my classes? Like, I need to make sure that this is happening in all of my classrooms.
Yeah, there are things that I do, but I would hazard to say that everybody should do them. And the reason is everybody's style is different. Everybody prioritizes different things.
Yeah.
But there are two things that I do that for me are really important in that space.
Yeah.
So every day, every lesson I have with my kids, when I mark the roll for each student, I say, it's good to see you. So if we're in a classroom, I say, Jim, it's good to see you. Sana, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Jemima, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
And that'll happen at the start of every lesson. And it means that the roll takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And occasionally you'll get a kid like, oh, sir, just mark the roll. My God, Mr. Harris, what are you doing? We don't need the welcome mat.
What? Where, Mr. Harris? Stop.
But for me, it's really important because and I usually say this, you know, like 3/4 to at the end of my teaching time with a given class. So, you know, term 3, if it's a full year subject, or term, you know, the end of term 4, I do my best to let them know, once we've been doing this for a while and once it's been embedded as a routine, that the reason I do that is because not everybody knows that somebody in their day has enjoyed their company.
Mhm.
So for some, and again, like it's potentially able to be seen as tokenistic, and I absolutely appreciate, you know, that as a possibility. But I think a lot of students, once they get to know me, are able to appreciate the fact that there's one person who they've seen that day, who has genuinely enjoyed the experience of being in the same room as them, being able to share that moment of teaching and learning with them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, even if nobody else addresses them that day, at least they've got one thing.
Yeah.
So that's like the main consistent thing that I do in terms of routines. In terms of a general attitude, I would say just coming across like things matter to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's and also that what matters to me is not necessarily the most important thing. You know, it's kind of a double-edged thing. When I've got kids who don't do their work, for example, you know, I like to go into, you know, mate, I understand where you're coming from. You know, it's Mr. Harris has printed off this worksheet and it's got all this gobbledygook on it. You've just learnt about it. You're feeling a bit nervous. But think about it this way. I've just gone to the effort of going to the staff room, mate. And you know how full the staff room is. And I've gone to the photocopier. And I've fought all these teachers just to get to this photocopier. You know, just legions. English teachers, humanities teachers, science teachers, the whole shebang. And I've got to this photocopy and I've printed these worksheets off just for you guys because I care. And I'll point at the worksheet, you know, really make a big scene of it because I care.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll kind of go along that sort of space. And eventually it'll be one of two things. You'll either get them with the banter and they'll appreciate it, they'll move forward. Or they'll ask you to go away and they'll like get tired of you and they'll try to do it as sort of like a hostage situation. I'll do this work if you stop this song and dance. Please, Mr. Harris, we've had enough. And that works better as they get to know me, which is really nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. And I think that's they're two like such versatile things. Like they're quite different in you know, output of what like you as a teacher are doing. But at the same time, they're both still centered around wanting the students to be able to feel as though they can you know, succeed in the classroom, or you know, that they're wanted in the classroom. And yeah, the first thing as well, especially like just what you were kind of when you were saying it, it's just a very simple thing. And it's not, now I'm not necessarily saying that every teacher needs to do something like that, but
Exactly.
you know, it's a simple thing that teachers can do, simple things throughout a lesson that have such a dramatic and massive and huge impact on then the students and their thinking later on. And I
Absolutely.
think obviously that can go both ways. We need to be very careful because obviously we can have that impact. But then you also need to know that like something is small and so it's a gesture or a genuine gesture can go such a long way. I just think that's really cool. And that's another thing that adds to the power of teaching, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of the time, you know, I get really wrapped up in the academics of it. And you know, oh, geez, you know, Jemima's not done well in her most recent test and blah, blah, you know. But at the end of, you know, our time together or my time together with a class, you know, I would say fairly reliably, there are students who are able to confidently say that science was a reason that they came to school that day, you know, because they knew that that would be the environment where they could just be for a little bit. You know, not necessarily be as in like veg out, but they could be themselves, they could feel wanted, they could feel like they belonged, you know, and that sense of belonging, I think is the most, I think it's the thing that I try for most. And it's if you're, you know, talking about strengths and weaknesses, I think that is a strength that I bring, you know, making students feel like they belong.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I've always said from the moment that like I found out we were going to like a similar region, that I'd obviously see you quite more often than just at the start of the Teach for Saturday kind of initiative. I always said like, if I was to choose someone's classroom to be in, just for one lesson,
Yeah.
just to check it out, just to check it out,
just a taster.
a little taster, and then I'll see if I want the whole shebang. I would definitely want to taste a bit of the Chris Harris classroom first, because I just feel like it'd be obviously. And I'm not saying that every lesson is going to be the most perfect lesson in the world, and every
it's not. Yeah,
that doesn't happen, right? But I think it's safe to say that your objective going into every lesson is that, and I think
absolutely.
in terms of teachers, if you're wanting to be a teacher, like I think if you've got something like that in your heart or in your mind, then you're gonna find teaching to be a fantastic profession. Yeah. So I guess then maybe we can jump to the other side of it, of a school, and talk about the staff or colleagues.
Yeah.
And obviously for a lot of new teachers going to a brand new school, maybe a school that they've never been at before, maybe it's in a city or a town that they've never been to. There might be 70, 80 staff that they know are working there. They might feel as though these kind of like groups already formed, people know each other already. It can be quite overwhelming for a new teacher, obviously, to like, just walk into there and teach at the same time, understand their students, know their students, connect with their students, but also, work with leadership, work with other colleagues, work with people in their learning areas, ES staff, well-being. There's a lot going on in a school. So obviously there are different things that we can do. There are different people that will connect with naturally,
absolutely,
strongly. But in terms of just like building those relationships with colleagues, maybe colleagues you see once or twice a week, maybe colleagues you see every day, like what are some things that, you have found to be helpful or beneficial, and like those kind of things?
I would say the main, I think I'll go with something I did, and then I'll talk about something that I kind of used internally. Perfect. So something I did when I got to, my school as it was when I first got there, because of the, transitions and stuff.
Yep.
And the school as it is now, having moved campuses.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things in terms of setting my relationship with different staff members up from the get-go was going up to them and saying, "Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a new teacher here. You probably know that already, but I'm not too familiar with, how this all works. I know that my job generally is to teach the kids science, but given that, you have position X, what can I do to make sure that, we can, like, my work doesn't impede, or my work can assist or augment what you're doing? And alternatively, what are the things that you would like me to keep in mind, like as, an office member, as a fellow teacher, as an ES? What are the things that are important to you that not enough other teachers keep in mind? I would say doing that. I can't necessarily, speak in great detail because I haven't, interviewed anybody about it and, asked for the... But I would say, generally speaking, coming from a place of how can I work best with you, and how can I work best so that this dynamic works really well?
Yeah.
Kind of sets up an expectation that, you're there to work together. You're there to, like, you care about your fellow staff members, and, you're there to help. Not necessarily to the point where you're running meetings and, doing all that extracurricular stuff that you just don't have time to do when you're starting up, but in the sense that you want to do your job as well as you can, and you're not afraid to ask for, experienced perspectives. I think a lot of the more experienced teachers really appreciate that, coming in and not thinking that you know everything, or not thinking that you have to prove that you know everything.
Yeah.
Because one of the best pieces of advice I was given was try to be good, but don't stress too much about being as good as you want to be until you're like 5 years in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really got to make sure you're doing your best, but you're also kind to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of a mental process, the thing that really kept me going, and this is especially true with staff that, because every staff has beef.
Yes.
Every staff has, either a couple of key staff members that everyone just kind of, or you've got like a general atmosphere of like nobody really, jives.
Yeah.
The thing that really keeps me going in that sort of circumstance is extending the same compassion that we extend to our kids, to our staff members. For every person that's going to say, this person does this and this person doesn't do this too well, generally speaking, there are 5 other positive things that you could say about that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And I think being able to see, our staff members as, complex people that have their strengths and weaknesses, and being able to show them the same kindness that, we would expect them to show to their students, really goes a long way in terms of, I've found, my own ability to work with staff that may potentially be considered to be a bit more difficult.
Yeah. And it was just reminding me, like, sometimes a school environment, maybe even more specifically like staff rooms, these kind of things can be very critical, because obviously, things are always happening at a school, or a student is always potentially doing something that maybe you don't want them to be doing, or someone doesn't want them to be doing. So the lens, I find, sometimes is always very critical in terms of like, this is bad, this is happening, this is bad. And I think that can then just naturally, because you're always kind of in that frame of mind, then lead to like being negative in any kind of thing that you're talking about. So I think also, just as a teacher, being aware to just limit how much we're actually speaking. I've found how much we're speaking poorly of certain students throughout the day. It's very easy to engage in a conversation about a student, but really trying to step back from that, and just more so, like you were saying, step back and say, like, so how can we maybe work this one out together, or do this or do that? Actually have a conversation with someone, rather than, focus in on what's not working, which is tough. It's very difficult to do. Because there's also a lot of other things just going on all the time. The dynamics of a school are insane.
Absolutely.
Absolutely insane. But I think, as one thing that I always keep in mind as well is, like, it's a never ending process of learning that we're in. And yes, there are people with 20 years experience, and yes, they will definitely know a lot more things about certain parts of like teaching and school than I would. But at the same time, they've also got this opportunity then to learn from me, as well as I have to learn from them. And
most certainly.
And that's, I think, a culture that, if it's built in a school, then like can really propel things to move forward.
That's really well said. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Having those fresh eyes and being able to, for example, look at an old curriculum as somebody who's straight out of uni. It's a real schmicko set of skills to have.
And I guess so, Chris, I've had you for a bit now, but there was really one more thing I also wanted to touch on, because I know how passionate you are about science, and I know that when it comes to teaching, passion in the classroom rubs off on students. And students are cluey. Students know if you care or if you don't care about what you're trying to teach them. So, I think, or what's your experience in, obviously, have you found that your excitement, your enthusiasm, your passion for science has made it easier to also maybe engage some students who may not necessarily always want to engage? Do you find it rubs off on them as well, and they're kind of more interested in what's going on?
I would say a fair amount of the time. And the reason is like you're always going to have kids that you just don't fit for, and that's okay. But I would say a fair amount of the time, like, you know, being able to inject a why into the classroom is really powerful. You know, having a lot of kids being in a room, looking at a piece of paper with some words on it, looking at a slide with some words on it, having their book out for some reason, having a learning tension on the board. You know, none of that matters unless, you know, somebody's excited about it.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a reason to be there, then all of a sudden you've got so much more engagement potential.
Yeah.
Even if it's just me who cares, that's at least our reason for somebody to write something down, which allows them to retain it slightly more. And in them retaining something just that little bit more, they're more likely to do well on their assessments. They're more likely to boost their self-efficacy, and they're more likely to, you know, be more engaged because this becomes something that they're good at. You know, it's both, I would say, directly and indirectly, a pretty effective engagement technique. Being able to come into a room and be like, right, so Adams, what is happening? You know, being able to be in that room and just dissect the universe in front of a kid is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, being able to share that excitement is not only, as you said, a really good engagement tool, but it's just fun.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, like kids are cluey and they pick up on the fact that you're having fun.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say the topics that I've taught best are the ones that I know really well, or the ones that I have decided to dive real deep into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as a teacher, you have so much more fun as well, right? You enjoy it so much more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like if you love teaching something, then like why just, you know, I think there are some things that, you know, I just like to talk to people about generally, you know, because it's just fun conversation about the universe we live in, you know, and I think it can transfer really well to any subject, you know. The human experience is really the crux of what we teach in a school. And so, you know, the reason we have disciplines and domains is because the human experience is just so multifaceted. And so the more of that, you know, that experience of being, you know, this beautiful sentient mass that you can kind of give to those students, you know, I mean, on top of being a really good engagement technique, it's also just a way to give them and yourselves, I suppose, you know, a sense of really deep appreciation and a capacity to, you know, experience, how to put it, a capacity to experience being, a capacity to experience appreciating being human on a deeper level.
Yeah, man. It's really beautiful that, like, as a teacher, especially like as a new teacher, you're still thinking deeply about what you're doing and also what the students are capable of, or what the students are wanting to achieve in these things. I think, you know, that's such a vital part of, you know, being I don't want to use the term successful, but just being an impactful teacher, I think, for these. If that's there, then, you know, you're on a roll. But I mean, look, Chris, I have had you for a while now, and I guess there's probably a lot of other things that I would love to like go into depth with you about. And I'm sure later on in another episode that we'll have that chance. But before I let you go, I really want to just, you know, and this is not easy, but like the art of the sentence or a summary, just very briefly, if you were to provide maybe in the last couple of years of your experience, one of your biggest learnings that you can think of, and it doesn't have to be the biggest, but one of the biggest, and then a recommendation maybe for someone who's thinking about becoming a teacher, or someone who's currently studying and maybe starting a new job next year, etc., etc. Like, what's a recommendation for them? So one of your biggest learnings that you've had in your experience, and then maybe a recommendation for someone thinking about getting into the teaching profession.
That's a good one.
It's a doozy
Mm.
because there's a lot.
It's a doozy. It's something that I do not take lightly.
Yeah.
Hmm. How much time are you happy to spend on this one? This is
I mean,
is this a throw your cards down type deal, or is this a we can sit here for like in terms of fractions of a Hans Geflogen? How long can we spend thinking about this
I
one?
wish I knew what that meant.
In terms of a recommendation, I think there's a lot I could say, but I think for the purpose of this, what I will say is it's very easy to beat yourself up. It's very easy to lose faith in your own ability as a teacher. It's very easy to have a bad day and be like, why am I here? It's very easy to see, a large group of tests where they haven't, your students that you've been teaching have not achieved the mark that you thought they were capable of. And you reflect on yourself and you think, oh God, maybe this isn't for me. I would say my biggest recommendation is to be reflective, but also kind to yourself. It's very easy to beat yourself up. It's a little tougher to figure out where to go from there. So in terms of recommendation, be reflective, but be kind.
Yeah.
Especially in your first few years, we're just chickens without heads until,
Yeah, but that's okay because
absolutely. And
as long as you know that you're learning.
Honestly, we can't pretend to be anything but because, and you'll have some bang up lessons. You'll have some absolutely cracking lessons in your first year and you'll think, oh, how good am I?
Too easy.
Oh, geez. Look at those A's, mate. Did your class get that? Oh, no. Okay, then. But you can't berate or congratulate yourself too much. It's all about, reflecting on where to go from there, and recognizing that, you have the capacity to, you do have the capacity to move on from where you are. You have the capacity to get better. If you've done a really terrible job that day or you've done an amazing job that day, there's still a place to go. In terms of my biggest learning, I think as somebody who cares about people a lot, I think the biggest thing that surprised me is how valid and powerful care is in a school.
Yeah.
Whether you're, teaching students, whether you're in leadership and dealing with staff, whether you're talking to peers, whether you're dealing with parents or community, if you show a capacity to care and a willingness to act on that capacity with a given person, I've found that has continually and reliably elevated the quality of not only my teaching, but also my capacity to be a good member of staff, my capacity to, be a really good colleague, and also my capacity to justify when I switch off. If I've given all of my heart and soul, to a given person in that moment, or at least as much as I can in that given moment, I feel that I can justify going home, switching off, and really taking that emotional recharge time that we really need.
Yeah.
So in so many facets, the most surprising thing that I learned was, as much as I wanted to come in and kick some academic butt, the willingness to show compassion and care and value for the people that surround you is so, so powerful.
Yeah.
in tandem with that academic focus.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said something like that better than you, mate. That was brilliant. It really was. It really was. Yeah, and I think extremely valuable for anyone thinking of going into this profession, or really any profession, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's just we can
that's
beat
pretty-
ourselves up about things just so often, and I think this is definitely transferable for any decisions that we make or things that we try to do in life. Just brilliant advice, I think. But yeah.
That's very kind of you.
So, Chris, I mean, this was a fantastic episode. I had a lot of fun. Got to delve into a bit deeper some of the things, some of the challenges, but also some of the great positives and rewards and experiences that you've had. How you've come to where you are now. A few years ago, both of us probably never thought that we'd be here chatting right now on something like this. But it's fantastic that I am able to do that. See you in your beautiful watermelon shirt, as I always love.
Every Friday.
Yeah, for those listening, Chris Harris always has the best shirt in existence. I kid you not. He's got a shirt for any kind of situation.
I don't know about any kind of situation, but it's No, actually, that's been another fun thing this year. And this will probably be cut out in post, but Monday through Thursday it's shirt and tie, and then Friday is Fun Shirt Friday. So
Friday. I mean, what
I
a
chuck
strategy.
on a Hawaiian shirt.
How incredible is that?
It's actually really weird if you think of it like a strategy. The thing I noticed this year was because we've had our students split up across 3 campuses. And half of the students I taught this year were on a different campus to me. Sorry, half of the students I taught last year were on a different campus to me this year. And when they came over for transition, the thing half of them said, because it was a Monday through Wednesday transition, the thing they all said was, "Sir, where's the Hawaiian shirt?" And I had to tell them it's not a Friday. And all they remembered was the Hawaiian shirts, even though it was only a fifth of the time. The impact that's, as you said, a small gesture or ritual can have.
Yeah.
It really,
And the thing I love about it most is that you're not putting something on. I mean, you are. You're putting a shirt on. But you're not you're not taking something that's not you and then trying to do that. That's just Chris Harris, right? That's you in a P, and you've just bought it out for them. And I think that's awesome. But okay, look, I don't want to keep you too long, but thank you, Chris. This has been awesome. Thank you for coming on. I can't wait for, people to hopefully listen to this and get some value out of it as well. I know I have just by being here speaking to you. So from my end, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, from my end, it's been an absolute pleasure, Sana. I'm real chuffed that you've decided to do this for our, growing teaching community, and also, teachers that have been teaching for a long time and feel like they need to connect to something that is either within or outside of their context. I think the resource that you're making is so valuable, and I really appreciate, especially given our current workload, the fact that you've gone to the effort of doing it. So, kudos right back at you, mate. Much appreciated.
Bro. Thank you, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so that was my conversation with Chris. It was an awesome episode. We were able to go into depth about really many things that are hopefully valuable to the people listening, but also were very valuable to me. He's a great friend of mine, and I really appreciate his time. So thank you, Chris. And also, guys, don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you're following the TTT Pod on Instagram, and also check the link tree in that description so you can get this podcast on all of your favorite spots like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. But until then, I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.